This story happened about 11 years ago. I was a senior in high school at the time, and this is without any doubt the scariest thing I've ever experienced in my entire life. It was a cold winter night in mid-December. I am from Iowa, and the winters here get extremely cold at night. Something else to keep in mind is that the snowfall made everything dead silent. You could hear anything and everything inside the house, and even immediately outside of it. My parents were separated, so I only lived with my mother. One day, she told me I would be home alone for the night because she was going to a party with her co-workers after work, and she was planning on spending the night over there. I didn't enjoy being home alone, so I decided to call over my best friend. We were hanging out in my family's walkout basement, just having a boring winter night playing video games. My friend had also sneakily brought some wine with him. My mother didn't allow me to drink wine at the time. That's why he had to sneak it in secretly. As we were sitting there opening up the first bottle, I heard the door to the garage open and slam shut. I immediately said, "Oh shit," and started looking for places to hide the bottle. My friend said to me, "I thought you said your mum was supposed to be out all night." "She was," I replied. I then heard a few heavy stomps followed with my mother yelling out, "Hello? Anyone home?" I yelled back up the stairs, "Yes, just hanging out in the basement." I heard a few more steps move from the garage door towards the stairs, and she yelled out again, "Can you come help me with something? I need you up here." I replied back, while frantically trying to find a good place to hide the wine bottle. "Yes, give me just a minute." Then there was silence for about 20 seconds. "Anyone down there with you?" she yelled back in a more concerned, serious tone, in a voice that was slightly off of my mother's. This was the first thing that told me something wasn't right. My mother never cared if anyone was over, as our house was a very open house to all family and friends. And the voice, it was just wrong. It sounded like my mother's, but it was missing something that I couldn't put my finger on. Weirded out, I replied back, "Just Colton." After I yelled that back to her, I found a good place to hide the bottle and began walking up the steps. As I was walking up the steps, I couldn't help but feel the overwhelming silence of the house and the slight gut feeling that something wasn't right. When I got to the top of the steps, I looked over to where the door to garage was, and also the kitchen right next to it, and it was black, pitch black. All of the lights were off, and there was no moonlight shining through any windows. I walked over to the kitchen yelling out for my mom. There was no reply, just silence and darkness. I felt my stomach tie into knots and my adrenaline started to kick in. I had to get out of here as fast as possible. My mother was not home. I ran back down the stairs, grabbing my coat along the way. "What's wrong?" Colton asked. "My mum's not home," I replied as fast as I could while looking for my truck keys. "What do you mean? You were just talking with her?" I could see the confusion in his face. I told him there wasn't anyone home and that we needed to leave as soon as possible. I took a few steps towards the back door that opened up to the yard, but then I noticed my dog shaking on the couch and my cat growling behind it. I couldn't leave them. I just knew that if we left, something would happen. "Are we leaving?" Colton asked, still confused as hell. "No, I can't leave them here alone. Something is really off. I'm going to call my mom and figure this out," I replied. I pulled out my phone and called my mom. She picked up immediately and said, "Hi, what's going on?" I asked her if she was just home a couple of minutes earlier and told her about how I heard her voice. I was hoping that she was playing a joke. "No, I'm just leaving the bar. I wasn't feeling very well. Are you okay? What do you mean you heard me?" she answers. I filled her in on the whole story, and she rushed home. Colton and I stayed in the basement with the animals until she got home. But before she did, you could hear something upstairs, not walking or sitting on things, but just some kind of a weird presence, as if we weren't the only ones in the house at that point. When she got home, you could feel the thing leave just as quickly as it came, like an overwhelming presence had just flown away as soon as my mother entered the home. We explained everything to her, and she was as creeped out as we were. My friend didn't want to stay any longer in that house, so he left. The rest of the night, nothing happened. We never figured out what the hell was going on that night. I'm pretty sure that house was haunted, because this was just one of the many weird stories that took place in that house. I'm glad I had a witness for this incident. Otherwise, my mother wouldn't have believed me and would have blamed it on my imagination or something. As I mentioned earlier, this story is from around 11 years ago. My mother has passed away by now, and I have moved away to Arizona. But whenever I go back to Iowa and see Colton, he still gets creeped out by what had happened that night. It's a memory that both of us share, and it keeps us close in a way. I will never truly know what we encountered that night, but I know that whatever it was that had my mother's voice, it was evil, and it had bad intentions, especially because it was calling me upstairs to help her out with something, possibly trying to lure me in.